Hey guys, it's me, Red, and welcome back to the Terror Zone. Today on the Terror Zone, we're going to take a little break from our usual Terror Zone stories and look into some other stories, like this one. Today is the holidays, as you can see, and it is time to talk about the darkest Christmas stories that we all know and love. Stories that we know and love, but told differently in some ways. And today we'll be talking about, well, you kind of know him, don't you? You know Dasher and Dancer and Prancer and Vixen. You know Comet and Cupid and Donner and Blitzen, but do you know the most famous reindeer of all that we're going to talk about today? Well, it's none other than Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Yes, we're going to talk about his original story from the original story, the original book. Now, if you don't know this, Rudolph started out as a book written and talked about. If you guys don't, I'll tell a brief history about what Rudolph is about. If you guys don't know, obviously you guys probably do know. Long story short, Rudolph has a red nose, and it's so shiny you might even see it glow. And for that reason, all the other reindeer laughed at him, and he would never let him play any reindeer games. And then one day, when it was so foggy, and Santa could never see what he was doing, he told Rudolph to lead the way for him, so he can deliver his presents. To show the other deers away, so they can all see throughout the fog. And soon after that happened, all the reindeers were happy. They were delighted to find out that Rudolph was the hero that saved the day for Santa to bring back all his gifts because of his red nose. Anyway, that's the story. Later on, while the book was made, it got so popular that it made it into a song. And then later, the Rankin Bass version came out with the claymation version of Rudolph, which is the one I come to know as, which is my favorite classic movies of all time. So, here's the real story of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. The book starts out by showing us how the other reindeer tease Rudolph. So it starts off like, ha ha, look, there's Rudolph. It just starts out like that. And then we cut to Rudolph crying with tears. Now we're describing his nose and how shiny and red it is. Then we move on to him going to sleep and awaiting Santa. You see, in this world, Santa gives gifts to everybody. Children, animals, and other stuff like that. So he gives it to good girls, good boys, and good animals, including the reindeer. So with that in mind, Rudolph fell asleep to await Santa's arrival with his reindeer, hoping that something will change for him. Instead of him running away in the Rankin Bass version, he decides to just fall asleep and dream that someday things will change. Basically. Also, during the book, it said that he also tried putting mud on his nose, but failed to cover it up. This is kind of similar to what happens in the Rankin Bass version, where his dad puts mud on his nose to cover his nose. But unfortunately, it comes off once he starts playing with Fireball, his new friend. And they start to notice his red nose and call him names. Anyway, while he was asleep, Meanwhile, with Santa, he tries to make his rounds. But sadly, the reindeers couldn't see what they were doing, so they kept running into things like planes and many stuff and falling to the ground. Many times, Santa could never see who the child was, a boy or a girl. A lot of times, he could never see what he was doing or what gifts he was bringing out or what children he was going to. So he even almost fell off his sleigh at one point and almost skinned his knee, which probably really hurt real bad. Poor Santa. So he tried everything he could to get to all his rounds, but he was not sure he was going to get around good enough time for that the the sun was almost rising. So what can he do? Yeah, so in this version, Santa does not go to Rudolph right away. He tries to have the best he can with the reindeer he has before he meets Rudolph. So eventually Santa goes to the house where Rudolph lives. And once he gets there, the nose is glowing so bright he could see the whole reindeer in his room. You see, throughout the whole time that Santa was bringing his gifts, he could never see anything in the room. It was all pitch black, just like the fog was. So he couldn't see a thing. But when he saw Rudolph's nose, it glowed in the darkness. So he did his all gifts, and he woke up Rudolph. And when he did, Rudolph woke up. He was surprised to see Santa there, very delighted to see him. Santa asked Rudolph to fly his sleigh, to lead him and guide the way. And that's exactly what he did. Throughout the whole time, Rudolph told Santa who lived and where, if it was a boy or a girl or an animal. He helped with Santa all his rounds. He was on the lead of the group. I should also mention that Rudolph is very bashful in this one. He's shy, he's timid, pretty much like the original Rudolph in the one we come to know as. So he's not much different from the original, really. So after he done with his rounds and everything, Rudolph was done, and he left a note for everyone to see that he was the hero of this story. When they saw what he did, everyone cheered and felt glad for him. They got a note and spread the word on everywhere. And Rudolph, when he found out, he was so happy. His nose glue so much that his whole body was red and glowing with the light. He was so happy. And furthermore, he was delighted all around. Everybody loved him as the famous reindeer who saved the day. Also, whenever there was a nasty fog outside at the end, it's told that whenever there's a fog, you'll hear Rudolph's hooves humping on your roof. And you'll see his nose glow at night. And you might hear him as Santa drives his sleigh, saying, "Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night." So basically, this story, if you haven't noticed yet, this book kind of goes into style with The Night Before Christmas, but in an altered sort of way where it's taken as Rudolph's story instead of Santa's story. So in a way, it's kind of rhyme-ish within the story and style of the book. And that is the real story of Rudolph. I hope you enjoyed it. It's not as dark as my usual stories, like Dumbo or whatever, but still a rather enjoyable story to read it. I highly recommend you read it because it's a very special story. You can read it to your kids or whatever because it's a really nice story. It's not that dark at all, kind of. Just some alternate changes than what you knew from the movies or from the ones you come to know and love. Anyway, that's the real story of Rudolph. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. Bye!